Welcome to another episode of the Pivoted Success podcast, hosted by our friend Sean Cochran from TCC Canada and myself, Jared Goldsmith from eSAX Virtual Events. Today we have a very special guest, Hoyin Cheung from Remo, the founder of this amazing virtual event platform that we're using now. Hoyin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Sean. I'm super excited to be on the podcast. And yeah, you got my name right on the first try. Awesome.
Hey, thank you, Hoyin. So, Hoyin, let's talk a little bit about your background. Who are you and what is Remo all about?
Sure. I originally, prior to getting into entrepreneurship and just startups in general, I worked at a bank previously. Also was like a management consultant for Fortune 500 companies. It was then where I started learning about remote work and how do I create remote teams, how to work remotely, how to communicate really effectively and collaborate across teams that people from many different locations, and that's when I first started building like a remote team. And so I've been leading and building remote teams for over 8 years now, and now when the kind of prior to the pandemic, I had a few businesses in several different areas. Some were successful, some were not. But the one latest one prior to Remo was a social media SaaS platform, and I started off with that, and that was actually my first business that I built myself that was fully remote. And through that, I learned that the tools that were available for fully remote teams were not very mature, and it was very difficult to lead teams. And so we first built Remo as a virtual office product, as a productivity product to help people connect in the most human way, to try to recreate that sort of hallway interaction, that hallway conversation that we all usually have when we all work together. And it wasn't until the middle of 2019 where we decided to really consider pivoting, and I'm sure we can talk about that more later. But in general, like, Remo is as you guys all well know, it's a immersive virtual events platform that allows people to create authentic conversations that build meaningful relationships, and that's been really our core mission. And how do we create such an immersive experience using just your browser, from your computer, no VR, no additional headset required, no download required, just straight from your computer, and something that what we believe is creates the most authentic experience right now on the internet.
Sure. And there's no doubt, we'll talk about how COVID affected you in a moment, but what led you to start the whole concept of hosting virtual office spaces? I know that's how you originally started. Like, what was the starting point for that, Hoyin?
So for the virtual office space part, what originally started off was we were looking at many different ideas, and I wanted to pick one really long-term trend that I wanted to piggyback off. And the one that I felt that I had a lot of skill sets on, I grew a lot of experience on, was remote work. And so we wanted to tackle a challenge that we personally had. And then when we kind of looked around and tried to analyze a lot of the tools, but at that time, Slack was not really around. It's just starting out, and Skype was probably like really the main tool. Zoom was also kind of catching up, but also like not really as popular as today. So there weren't that many tools to really help people communicate. So we wanted to create something that was just more human, a more human way to communicate, and just try to mimic the office in some way, but not mimicking it in a super hardcore way of like making everything 3D and making everything really graphically intensive. We wanted to simplify it, so we made up this map concept, and with back in the day, it wasn't an event map. It was a map of an office. It was actually a map of an office on an island, on a deserted island. I don't know, Jared, if you've ever seen that virtual office map before.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
So that was basically the one of the really early versions of the map and of the product that we created first, and that's actually really the base of what we started with going to the market with.
So did you guys use it internally as a tool first to sort of test it and tweak it and that sort of stuff?
Oh yeah, we used it internally heavily. I think one thing that Remo does a lot is we dog food our products a lot. We test it internally first to make sure it works. It's part of our testing process. Right, even right now, any new feature that goes out to you guys, to anyone, is always released to us internally for a period of time, to kind of work out the kinks, and then we then release it out after.
Sure. Now, Hoyin, let's go back to the mid to late 2019. COVID was far away. You're working on it. Let's separate how you personally were affected by COVID and then how you dealt with COVID from the platform.
Okay, and this is relative to the business, right?
Yes.
Okay, so starting with 2019, so starting in the middle of 2019, we already pivoted into virtual events already.
Way ahead of your time. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and I can share with you maybe later, like how we decided to make the pivot. And then let's see, we were about to do an AppSumo deal. So we signed up to do an AppSumo deal that was supposed to release at the end of March of 2020. And we already released the virtual event platform already around mid of 2019. We were already growing. So I was hustling and getting people to use the platform and doing a lot of podcasts like this. I was just going around just trying to drum up, support and
Sure.
Get people to use the product. And then when February rolled around, that's when we started to see like just a lot of traction coming on its own. And we were very lucky at that time because it was only us hop in and run the world at the time. That was really the new sort of the version 2.0 of webinars and virtual event products at that time. And so we were very lucky at that time to be like basically one of the few choices. So we were about to launch our AppSumo deal, and we were just overwhelmed by the number of leads and customers that we're getting. So the impact of COVID at that time was that we had to delay our AppSumo deal. We just had so many customers that we couldn't incorporate another, wave of leads to come in. And so we had to say, hey, sorry, AppSumo, we need to maybe delay a little bit. And so from that point, it was just really a blur. Like it really just kind of just a ton of leads that came in. We were just focused on closing. Like the product was not that great back then. A lot of I would say the whole year was really about firefighting. Really, we spent the whole year just firefighting, trying to close deals, make sure the product is stable, fixing things. It was production hell, I would definitely say.
What I like to say, Hoyin, when COVID hit, people around the world, in no particular order, were looking for three things: toilet paper, hand sanitizers, and an alternative to Zoom. There is no doubt that you and your colleagues over at Remo were in probably one of the most sought after industries in the entire world. And I think that's fair to say that by then you were already well positioned to really take it to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely say it was very lucky to be at the right time, at the right position. And when thinking back, it was a lot of decisions we made so we had a goal of launching the product, creating features for the AppSumo launch. And so the product was pretty much almost ready to launch for AppSumo, which coincidentally was around the time when the pandemic started, which coincidentally was the feature sets that we created also were needed by people at that time. Like, so there's like a bunch of stuff that we created at that time that we may not necessarily would have created, like custom domain, that kind of thing. And that was due to AppSumo, really. And so there's a lot of features that really just kind of coincided. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to explain like how we were able to just time that correctly. I don't
It's
really know how
incredible how
it worked.
everything sort of fell together in sort of a perfect harmony. Although I'm sure, as you put it, firefighting, not an easy harmony, but still definitely where you would want to be, I would imagine, at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And planning the future, because your organization has been growing tremendously. At least when I like the story I like to tell when I started using Remo, and I should mention out there that Remo is the only virtual platform that I use. There was, my understanding was about 8 or 9 staff. Now that's way over 100. It's really something.
Yeah. We grew from a few staff, like 5 or 6, at the beginning of 2020 to over 100 by the end of the year. That's correct. Yeah. Absolutely.
Wow, that's quite
That's
something.
incredible. And are you all remote? You said you're an expert in building remote teams, so I imagine you'd be remote.
Yeah, we built it all remote. That was the theme. That was my strategy that I picked, and it really was out of the fact that I couldn't find great talent very easily. And so I wanted to find great talent in places that nobody else was looking, and developed a way to do that. And so that worked out quite well in finding great people.
Yeah, well, it's hidden talent, right? So being able to access those recesses of the world where people are hiding with the skill set that you need, right?
That's right, exactly.
And you said the world, Sean. Hoyin, you might have been one of the first to realize the global market. It is a global marketplace, and having a platform like this, your reach for human resources is not limited to just your geographics.
Yeah, you mean like, yeah, right, yes. So yes, exactly. I mean, it did help because virtual events was used by everyone in the world, and so having people in different places also like played into that as well. So that helped us from the time zone. So we were able to offer like 24/7 chat support. I mean, I don't know if you guys know, but like chat support is really important to me. Being able to give really good chat support to both like hosts and the guests for me was critical, um, in to basically help people when the platform couldn't successfully like cater to the challenges that many people had. I mean, the very technical people, that was okay. Because of the pandemic, you had people from all kinds of backgrounds, so we had to cater to the person who was least technical. And so for me, chat support was that success, and chat support was global, and we were able to offer 25%, 24/7 because of that.
For sure. Usually when we ask the question, how have you pivoted for success? How have you helped others to adapt? Businesses, leaders, organizations, they tend to talk about their personal. I've done this, I joined this, I did this. But you are providing the resource to help others adapt. How does that feel?
I mean, like when I first started hearing about agencies developing their own businesses from Remo, I mean, that really made me feel really happy, because not only, but it also gave me a sense of responsibility, like a very renewed sense of responsibility. So it's like happiness and also pressure, because now I'm like, okay, now I really can't screw up, because and we made some mistakes, like we as like we made some mistakes where it did affect people's livelihoods in a very effective way, in a very we affected them positively, and we also affected them negatively in some of the things that we did. So I think that really made me realize that what I'm doing is way bigger, it wasn't just making people guests happy. Like that wasn't just that, even though that itself was really the part that made me really happy, but it also made me realize that I'm doing something that's actually, helping a lot more people through the pandemic. And I think that made me have a sense of responsibility and take it like just really try to, tell my staff that, this is really important. This is extremely important. We cannot let people down like that.
Right.
Yeah, you're helping teams thrown into this insane world that we live in now who had no help other than, I don't want to say it, but Zoom or something like that that just doesn't meet the needs of anything close to what people were used to before, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and you were the first one to say the platform humanizes networking and connections. And that's really what caught my attention initially, Hoyin, because I'm known for networking. That's what I've been doing many, many years prior to COVID. And as an event planner myself and a musician, anyone in the arts really felt the heat for during COVID. And when you
Right.
say that it's people like me, my entire business relies on the stability and the amazing work that you and your team does. So on behalf of us, thank you very much.
No, thank you. Thank you for choosing us.
Let's move over to the next subject. And as a serial entrepreneur, as you are, how have you observed that entrepreneurship has changed because or during COVID?
Hmm.
Like you don't only have to look into your own organization, but you're welcome to, or perhaps you've heard of other people who've just perhaps shifted the way they start or run their businesses. Any thoughts about that?
I think a few. I don't think in I mean I'll answer this like with respect to Remo and maybe what I with respect to like other companies. With respect to Remo internally, I don't think that entrepreneurship has changed much. I don't I think I do think though that entrepreneurship has become much more distributed in general. Like, as in, people are willing to build remote teams in order to pursue an entrepreneurship opportunity. So I think a lot of it is the way how people collaborate. That's number one. And I think number two is that there's a lot more people willing to use technology to grow their business. So, for example, like e-commerce is like huge during COVID. So I would say it's definitely got people to create businesses more using more technology, adopting more technology in general, not just virtual events, but just across the board. So I think that's a big change. And I think I think that's probably some of the major things that I've observed. Yeah, I don't have really great answers for this one.
No, but honestly, it ties in with what you said before about the globalization of talent. So, I mean, now the technological side of things scared people. So, the idea of operating a remote team is daunting, right? So, now everybody's been forced into it. And with tools like Remo, it's possible for a lot
Yeah.
more entrepreneurs than it ever was before. So, I think it's very interesting to see how things are going to evolve, hopefully.
I mean, I definitely seen that people that I mean, I remember last year or yeah, not 2021, but 2020. I remember like talking to some event agencies that never touched a computer, like they've never done anything. Like events people, I remember when people they would I remember this one potential customer. She was from the UK. She emailed us. It's like, I need to talk to someone now. Very demanding. We asked her like, hey, have okay, please go in here, fill in this form or do this. She struggled. She couldn't do it. And eventually she's like, I can't do this. I would, I met a lot of people that just couldn't or was struggling to adapt with technology. This was like mid 2020 though. And it was really fascinating because at that time I was like, wow, events people don't really know technology at all. Like in general. Like they're very people based, businesses. I don't really blame them. Now I think it's changed a lot. Now, like every events person you talk to, they've adapted and they had to force themselves to learn technology. So it's like really just forcing it down some people. I still don't know if that lady is doing virtual events now, but I recall it. She had a really difficult time logging in, like one of the really like really difficult. Absolutely,
Wow.
like you would have been, if Jared, if you had to like solve that problem, like for a guest, you would probably be like, oh man,
Yeah.
don't even try, man. Like just
Well, Hoyd, you were talking about a little bit of how entrepreneurship's changed during COVID. Sean, this ties into you, right? As a physical office rental location with TCC Canada, when Shopify moved out of their headquartered offices in downtown Ottawa, across from City Hall, you guys took it over. And because they went, I believe, entirely remote. Is that right?
That's right. They're virtual first now, so they've actually eliminated all of their physical office space. So they're going to be operating sort of drop-in meeting centers in a bunch of different cities, but otherwise they're going to be remote.
Yeah. And so
cool.
you jumped in, and you saw the opportunity, so it was a great fit for you and TCC Canada.
Yeah, and I think for them, they've spent so much time evaluating what an office would be and what would be the most productive and collaborative environment. I mean, it was such a good jump in for somebody to take over because if it was me, that's the type of office I'd want to go to if I did want to go to an office. So hopefully on the other side of this, there'll be a nice hybrid between the remote and the physical, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Who knows, Hoyin? Maybe you want to go back into the virtual office side again. Who knows? One day.
Yeah, I never say never. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, I agree.
So Hoyin, let's put your forward-thinking cap on. What are you most excited about? Let's say 6 months or a year out from now.
I mean, for me personally, I think I'm the most excited about creating really delightful, amazing experiences online for people. Like, we spent a good part of 2021 really just figuring out who our target market was, figuring out more about a product, learning. I mean, funny enough, just learning more about ourselves and where we fit within the grand scheme of things. Things were still very uncertain in 2021. At least for the full year, I would say, it was very like up and like it was, yeah, we're using virtual events. Oh, we're not because there's vaccine and and it seems to be spilling over now into 2022 with Omicron. For us, I think we want to go back to kind of what our core strengths are, which is creating a great product that makes people feel amazing when they go to an event, because that's kind of how Remo really first started. Like people had great experience, and then they told their friends, or they had a great experience and want to like do it for their own company or create an event for their own company, hiring an agency like you guys or whoever else. I think that's something that I'm really most excited about, and it's more based off of how do we create the experience even better. Stability is something that we worked extremely hard in the latter part of the year. So like I'm really confident to say that like the stability part is pretty much good right now. It's like really good. And we still have a lot of work to be done, but we're confident enough to now go back and start developing features and making sure that we are competitive enough and being able to forge our own path within the virtual events industry that's just uniquely different than what else.
Sean, over to you.
Yeah, very exciting times because I think whether or not this pandemic continues to drag on, I think there's always going to be a virtual side to everything because it connects the whole world. So instead of holding an event with 1,000 people, you could have 100,000 people because you could have people all over the world. So I mean, it's just including. So I mean, it's such an inclusive potential opportunity as well as just the ability to connect with so many different people, right? So I think what you guys are doing, I mean, it's trailblazing and being in the right place at the right time. Let me tell you, guys definitely were there. So I'm really excited to see what you guys are going to do in the coming year.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Now, we talk about a little bit what's happening in the future, but it's been going on for some time, the whole concept of hybrid. Part in person, part virtual. I know you probably talk about this every couple of days, Hoyin, if not more. How would you say that will take effect for hosting events in the future?
Well, I think based off of what I've seen for the whole 2021, I think well, there's two types of hybrid, right? There's what I call like sequential hybrid, meaning like you host one event at a time. Host a physical and then virtual one at a time. They're both separate events at different dates, different times. I think that already is normal. I think people are going to continue doing something. We've reached normality for that because that's very easy. If you're talking about parallel hybrid, meaning launching physical and virtual at the same time, I think there's been a lot of development from the technical side by a lot of companies to try to solve this problem. But I think it's something where it's a lot more harder problem to solve. And I think it's more suited better for agencies to solve that, frankly. And to put different technologies together in order to create a great experience. And also people need to have a decent amount of budget for that. And like they have to have the commitment to have two teams and, you know, a lot of technological tools and infrastructure to kind of like get that thing going. I think that's really reserved for just really certain types of projects that are willing to do that. It won't be suited for like the whole gamut of virtual events entirely. I think that's what's going to happen for hybrid. And I think it's something that I think we would love to take part of, but it's not our current focus because we're really focused on the virtual side. Not because we don't want to focus on physical. It's just that there are much more well prepared, well designed players out in the market that are attempting to do this, and well funded, frankly, players that want to do this really, really well. And I personally think that you need a lot of funding to do this piece well, to do this parallel hybrid well from a technological perspective. Training, getting people, getting the customer to like fully get on and run the event. I think it's more suited for some other people to kind of pursue.
Sure, a lot more complexities, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think our platform's already complex enough, and I don't feel like we need to make it even more complex, or at least targeting an even more complex solution. It's an option, like you can't do it. I mean, I'm sure, Jared, you've done some, and I'm sure like you would be able to do it. But in order for other people to do it, it's something that we don't have to. I'm more interested in partnering with other online solutions, and working with them, and embedding inside and creating this one experience for them versus going into the physical realm at the moment.
And you use the word offhandedly, experience. To me, and probably any other virtual event planner you talk about, it's the experience that attendees have. Is it easy to use? Does the person know how to explain it properly? And is it facilitated? And when they walk away or leave their computers, and say, that was the best virtual experience I've ever had, they're always going to come back for more. So I think partnering with the right people, like, Sean, you've hired quite a lot of staff and you've worked with a lot of people. And it's about the people you work with that helps your brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, continuing on the hybrid side, I don't want to spend the whole time talking about this, but it's something dear to our heart. I remember when COVID started, there was people hosting a lot of free virtual events, and I thought the impression was, oh, virtual events, they cost a lot less money. They should be much less expensive. Why are you even charging $10 in a head, like, to attend? Oof. Well, do you have any thoughts about what goes on for a virtual event? It's not as simple as people think.
Yeah, I mean, I did have to organize events. I think what people may not see is that you still need people to kind of organize it. So it's not like as cheap as you think. There are a lot of opportunities to reduce costs, like travel and like from the guests and the space, food, that kind of thing. But I think maybe what's happening is when people are organizing physical events that are like between 50 to 100 people, those types of events have a cost that's very different from like a huge conference, for example. Like a huge conference would have a crap ton of really additional costs involved, whereas like a simple event may not, and so maybe like the gap isn't as big, maybe. But to me, like I've already been hearing that companies have a different budget for virtual events. Anyways, they have a lower budget for it. Anyways, like that's already been, people are now mature enough in terms of their experience with virtual events that they know how much it could cost and how much they're willing to put in and all that kind of stuff. So they already have set budgets for that. What I think is something that would be different is that two things. One is that if we can prove that the engagement is better or just as good as physical, and number two is it's much easier to get more people, then I think the budget and the value can be expressed better to the customer. And I think that's the key. Like you have to say, and also like it's kind of like how advertising, like Facebook ads first started. Imagine back in the day you're trying to tell people to put ads on Facebook and Google, like the classic companies. They would be like, no, why would I do that? I want to stick to my billboards. And then you said, well, you can track it now. And they said, why do I need to track it? Like, why do I? It's kind of like that right now. It's like we have to educate.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah,
educate.
you're right.
Yeah,
you're right. It's so exciting because now I can measure everything, whereas if you did a physical, you cannot. So it's actually much more easier for us to share the value, and that's what, as a company, we're working on right now, is to really create really good analytics for partners like you and our customers to really just show the value. So then now when someone says, oh, I want it cheaper, now you can say, well, how much did it cost you to do a physical event? And they would say, it will cost me this. So how much value do you think you got from that? You can ask that question and you can see what they like. How do you measure your success and your value off of that? And then now you can say, well, you don't know, right? How about if I told you that with the same amount of money, I could tell you how much value success that you got, and you can share that with your boss.
Oh yeah, when people say to me, "Can I get their people's first and last name?" I said, "Absolutely," and a whole bunch of other analytics. They're blown away. Yeah.
So that's to me is key, because then they can see how the money can be fully justified.
And you can measure real-time engagement, which is usually impossible. You've sold your ticket to a physical event and the person's there, but you don't know if they're actually sitting in on any of the talks or anything else. Whereas in this, you can literally see who is attending and what's going on, right? So it gives you real-time actual information about what's going on.
And I think most people don't treat events. They treat events treated as like social media or ads or SEO marketing, whereas it's very quantified. Events is still in this little realm area of just like kind of PR, like it's just very, we just do it, but we're not really sure kind of what value we get. And I see this shift of moving this over into marketing, more as like a marketing tool. It has already happened, but it hasn't been the events marketer isn't necessarily a numbers person, and the expectation from execs may not be that events can deliver numbers where I can say, oh wait, wow, this is like a Facebook ad where I can show you the conversion, I can show those numbers. I'm not sure if that has permeated across the entire event industry yet.
I haven't heard it put that way before, but that makes a lot of sense. Combining the best of what social media has, the best with the marketing in the form of a virtual event. That's a really wise thought. Yeah.
And specifically what I mean is like the numbers part of social media, how everything is really quantifiable. Like that part is what we're now all used to. But not many people are still are still trying, but we're still in the pathway of converging that and having events underneath that is, I don't know if it's underneath, but definitely side by side.
Right. So, I mean, there's no doubt that the future is bright for virtual events and where Remo has positioned itself appropriately. And like, do you plan on perhaps you've worked on the functionality, you've worked on the stability, worked on growing the team, perhaps partnering? Like, I'm trying to get a sense on the future uh, because of COVID. And do you care to comment on that, Hoyin?
Yeah, I mean, we're so in 2022, we're going to be really focusing on partnerships. And we have several areas we want to partner. One is we want to partner with platforms where our customers are using a lot anyways. So for example, some of our customers are using like universities. Some of our customers are using a lot of universities specific platforms for learning and stuff like that. So we want to partner with those platforms, or alumni association platform, for example, and partner with them specifically so that, and this is by request from our customers. So that's like number one. And then number two is potentially in the food area, food and experience delivery area. Partnering with because we found that food increases attendance rates by like 30 to 50%.
It always has, and virtual is no exception.
And I think that needs to be put in the forefront, I think, as a key way to do that. I think people are still not really doing that as much. And I think that's also another really good way to get more budget as well, to get more budget in general. So it benefits everyone involved. So that's like another area that we think we want to be more involved in. And and then any other platform that helps event organizers make their job easier and better. It's something that we want to experiment with and try to like do a better job in that sense. So that's from a platform standpoint. And then from like agency standpoint, obviously, is to work with more agencies that are in the markets that we want to be in.
Great, thank you. Sean, over to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say the tangibles integration into it, I think, is a really great idea. I've attended a few virtual events, and you get a box with different snacks and interactable items that they bring up throughout the thing. So I find it's a nice way of sort of reaching through the screen and interacting with your audience more than a truly virtual and removed experience, right? So I like the idea of sort of meshing that together because, again, it creates more of an immersive experience for everybody, right?
Yeah, and it's already been proven to increase attendance. So on a virtual side, I think there's a lot of benefits to it, in my opinion. A lot of benefits. Like you have something in your home that represents the event that you can remember by. And it's an amazing reminder. Like you get this package in the mail, you're like, what's this for? Oh yeah, it's for this event that I was supposed to go to. And now you feel like you have to go now because now you have the food. So it's like, it's a pretty effective, I think it's a really effective tool, actually.
Yeah, and for those who are not so sure what we're talking about, I was hosting an event, must have been about a year ago. Corporate client, they mailed or delivered to all of their attendees, I think it was 50 or 100 people, bottle of wine, candles, and a full plated meal. And everybody was sitting there with their white napkins. It was a sight to see with the people's candles. It was absolutely an experience, and they couldn't stop talking about it. So that's absolutely a great part to consider for virtual events. Thank you for that. Yeah. So we're going to be wrapping up shortly. Hoyin, let's talk about words of wisdom for others. Let's say they don't only have to be event planners, but people who are still struggling, say as an entrepreneur during COVID. Would you care to impart some words of wisdom for others?
Yeah, I think during COVID and coming out of COVID, I think it's really important to really keep your mind really open. Like there's a lot of opportunities, a lot of opportunities. I mean, a lot of people say that right now is the best time to start a business. So if you're struggling right now, just remember that there's a lot of people that are now finding success because of all the new opportunities that have been opened up. And so being able to try new technologies, being able to go into a new potential industry, applying your skills in a different way, I think is really the key. And I think there's still a lot of I think there's still a lot of opportunity. I think there's still a lot of opportunity because the landscape has been changing. There's still a lot of things that are undetermined yet. Like there's no markets that are like super locked in, as in like there's a lot of established players. There's still a lot of movement. I'll give you an example, like hybrid. Like hybrid is a space where hybrid events is a space where like there's still a lot of uncertainty in that, and there's a lot of opportunity to build potential things that can help hybrid events as a good example. And so when there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of opportunity. And I think just being open-minded will allow you to get there. And the second part is just doing something, producing something, creating something. Creating something will give people something to look at when they consider you in whatever form. And it also it allows you to get exposure. And that's actually how a lot of the things that we've done is we've kind of manufactured our own luck by just doing a lot of different stuff, things that worked and a lot of things that didn't work. And some of the things that we never knew would have worked ended up working really, really well. Actually, I don't know if you guys want me to share how I pivoted into virtual events.
Please.
Love it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So when I originally did virtual office, like I was trying to sell it in the beginning of like 2019. And when I first started selling virtual office, like I interviewed a lot of people who had virtual had remote teams, and they all told me that the problems that they were trying to solve were like, trying to feel human, trying to, connect with people in a human way and all that stuff. So I built the virtual office product, but barely anybody wanted to buy it. We had some sales, but it wasn't to the level of virtual events.
Is that because it was foreign for them, would you say? Like it was so unique that people haven't...
No, it's actually the opposite. It's actually the opposite. Is a lot of fully remote teams, they already had their own processes all set up. And they felt at that time, that Remo was like monitoring people, and they didn't like that, which is funny because it's exactly the same as Slack, but it was this visual aspect to it that made people think that way. And it was very bottoms up sales, means you had to convince the employees, and that was hard. The only way we got sales was about to convince the employers, like the managers. The managers were the ones that really, really liked it. And so one day we worked with this one guy who was hosting a virtual summit at that time, which they called it virtual summits back in the day, which is a virtual event. And we said, hey, why don't we collaborate? We'll modify our product a little bit and make it into a virtual event, a virtual conference, and try to sell the virtual office through using Remo as virtual. We're like, oh, maybe people will be able to feel Remo and get what the virtual office is. They'll get it. And so we did that. And across 3 days and 10,000 people, like not a single person bought the virtual office. Like no one. And then when I spoke to, and when people came up to me, they're like, I said, hey, what do you do? You're thinking about a virtual office. It's like, no, I'm not. I don't want to use Remo for virtual office. I want to use Remo. I want to host an event. How can I use your product right now to host an event? And I'm like, we just modify the product. It's not really ready yet. We just did just for this event. Like that's it. It's like, well, why not? Why? And the feedback that I got was literally like night and day. When people saw virtual office, they were like, oh yeah, okay, that's cool. Yeah, all right. And then when people saw the conference, they were like, oh my gosh, this is great. Wow.
So the market was unfolding before your eyes because of that.
Yeah, I mean, the market basically told me where to go, essentially. They told me that, hey, this is fantastic. This is something that you really, you're like, you really hit on something. And I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah, well, now I got to figure out that.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. But it's part luck, but also some calculation, because the reason why we did this, the reason why we spent the investment to do it, was because we wanted to test out the conference, the virtual conference use case. But we would never have spent the investment to modify the product if it was like for a real estate conference. You know what I'm saying? It was for a virtual office remote work conference. So we're like, well, we can hit two birds with one stone. We'll do two things, and hopefully at least one thing will come out of it that was positive. And we were lucky that one of them did. And so it was a little bit like, you know, calculated and hoping that one of those things will make it. And you know, it paid off. And we were able to get a use case that actually people really vibed and resonated with. And that's when we started to really think deeply about what we wanted to do. And then we finally made the decision to really like further build out the virtual conference product. Even though we had no idea how to make money, we had no idea if people would pay for it, we had none of that. But what I did feel and realize was people were really passionate about the experience. And that's what I followed. I said, if people love this thing so much and people were really loving it, I was like, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way to make this into a business. And that's what I followed. With that gut. So when you're, and I think, you know, going back to like wisdom is like, you need to find that flow. Like you need to find the flow when things are flowing and business is flowing, money is flowing. Like people, it's like a downward, the ball is rolling downhill. And once the ball feels like it's rolling downhill, you just follow it. You just follow that ball.
Right. Sean, anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's great. That's such a great story. It's so interesting too. Again, open yourself up to the different possibilities and sort of pushing things in the direction you think it should go. And then the world telling you, no, actually, I think this is the way it should go.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, you know, putting it in my perspective point, and I've been playing music saxophone for 35 years, up when COVID hit. As I mentioned quickly earlier, that musicians are one of the most affected groups by COVID. We can't host events, we can't go in person, we can't play music. And I came across your platform and I realized this is the future. And I went all in. And I realized that, you know, you were talking about the words of wisdom earlier, that working the ball down, kicking the ball downhill instead of uphill, you know, plugging an all saxophone band was always a tough sell. But the world needs virtual events. You have the best platform out there. It just made perfect sense. So
yeah,
amazing. And also something else that COVID has probably taught most people is during COVID, it's been a great time to finally pursue that business opportunity you've always wanted to.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid. Yeah. So Hoyin, thank you so much. How can somebody get in touch with you, please?
LinkedIn. I can send you my LinkedIn account, and you can. I have a lot of content up there. I'm starting to talk about entrepreneurship more as well for this month of Jan, and so you can definitely follow me there.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much. So today on the Pivoted Success podcast, we were joined by the founder of Remo, Hoyin Cheung, and on behalf of my co-host, Sean Cochran from TCC Canada, and myself, Jared Goldsmith from eSAX Virtual Events, thank you so much for tuning in. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you on the virtual platform, Remo.
Thanks, guys.